Welcome to R&R Showtime with Robert,
And Ryan.
and today we will be discussing the final Return of the King, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Have you seen this movie?
No, you should tell me about it.
Oh, it's this little indie flick. You probably never heard of it.
All right, describe the whole movie to me real quick.
A battle happens. Some guy tosses jewelry in a volcano, and that's pretty much it.
Oh, I think I heard about that.
Cool. Let's talk about it for hour plus.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So, I guess let's start. First impressions. What do you remember feeling when you saw this movie as a child?
Glory. Straight up glory. Satisfaction. Hope. Destiny. What did you feel?
Some of those, honestly, it was such a satisfying conclusion to the three movies. Like, but I left Two Towers like I know more or less how this is gonna end, but I want to see the final steps to get there. And there's some details of the ending that I did not know, and so to see those things happen just felt so like well earned and smart and well crafted. It not a lot of people know this, but Return of the King is a good movie.
Yeah, so good. It won the most awards, Academy Awards of any movie.
I think it may hold that as a tie with some other movie. I could look that up real quickly if you want to talk about some other stuff.
Yeah, still literally fantasy third in a trilogy fantasy film holds the most Academy Awards alongside something else that probably, would make sense to have.
Titanic and Ben-Hur.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, the third of a trilogy fantasy movie holds a tie for most awards with Titanic and Ben-Hur.
And it holds the record for the highest clean sweep because it won every single award it was nominated for, whereas Titanic and Ben-Hur were nominated for awards that they didn't win.
Yeah, losers. Nice job not being the best.
The counter argument would be that Lord of the Rings didn't get nominated in all of the prestigious categories, which would include the acting categories. Whereas Titanic, I know at least one of its wins was for acting, and I don't know. I've never even
and
seen
apparently it wasn't Leonardo DiCaprio.
No, yeah, it was Kate Winslet. I'm pretty sure she won.
Fucking just wow, yeah. This always adds to the whole like Leonardo DiCaprio just being constantly snubbed for being in like amazing movies and doing a fantastic job.
I would need to see who won that year to say whether or not he didn't deserve it versus who lost to Kate Winslet that year. So those two specific awards could have been justified. But let's talk about the Return of the King.
I don't know. At this point, I'm a little more interested in talking about Titanic.
I am a little bit, but let's focus on the topic at hand.
Fine. All right. Yeah. So first impressions, you felt the glory, the majesty, the absolute, pinnacle of.
The Two Towers, I think, is the better movie, but Return of the King has the benefit of finality and just like giving you every single thing that you. Well, I guess not technically everything, but like everything feasibly ends in a way that's just so clean, neat, and satisfying and what it should be.
Right.
The only things that don't get resolutions are the things that didn't have real story arcs to begin with or are resolved in very small ways because the arc was so small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let's just jump right into it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going based off of memory here. Haven't watched Ryan asked, have you watched this movie? I would say not recently. It's actually been a little while since I watched it. So Ryan might have the more fresh memory for how exactly all the scenes go. And he's probably going to pull up a summary so he can read along and keep it tracked. But
yeah,
basically we start the film, immediately after the last previous battles. The movie actually starts with like a flashback, I believe, to Smeagol and Deagle, basically fishing, and after falling in the water, his friend slash brother,
cousin,
cousin Deagle falls in the water and spots a glimmer deep under the river and grabs it, and it is a beautiful golden ring, which Smeagol then proceeds to murder him over and take it. And we see this sort of this slow degradation and casting away of Smeagol and how he turns into Gollum
as he abandons his life as a hobbit to go be in the Misty Mountains, which is why before this podcast I put on a little bit of a Misty Mountain Hop by Led Zeppelin, which now I know what the Misty Mountains are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But Gollum and the evil ones slipped up and crept away with her.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I hope you guys all enjoy our musical renditions.
Stay tuned for an entire cover album of Led Zeppelin songs themed around Lord of the Rings. It's not a ton, but it's more than you might expect.
So we have this flashback, and we have Frodo kind of awaken with the start, and they are now. I'm not sure exactly where they're supposed to be. I mean, they're moving through like a portion of Gondor that's very close to Moria, or not Moria, Mordor. Oh, Jesus, and I almost can't remember yet. Like they awaken, they haven't gotten very much sleep, and they're kind of just on the borders of these dark, dank lands. And
I can give it how Wikipedia puts it.
Yeah,
Gollum leads Frodo and Sam to Minas Morgul.
Yes.
Where they watch the Witch King of Angmar, leader of the Nine Nazgul, lead an army of orcs towards Gondor.
Is that like literally the first scene that happens in the movie?
No, you skipped over Gandalf and Aragorn going to Isengard.
Right. Okay. So we have them like getting up, proceeding on their way, and then we have a procession of Rohirrim, including Theoden, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, all heading towards Isengard to assumingly make go forth in treaty with Saruman, or make him pay for what he's done. And when they arrive, they see that they see two hobbits sitting on a broken wall in a flooded the flooded land,
smoking some weeds and eating some food.
Yep. And they're overjoyed to see them basically safe, and apparently like the victors over Isengard. And they proceed forward to confront Saruman, who's being held up in his tower. And during this confrontation, Theoden speaks to him, and Gandalf speaks to him, and sort of like basically like calls him out and says like, "Hey, eat a dick! Like you're, I'm breaking your staff, and you're no longer in power here." And during this exchange, he basically like smacks down Grima Wormtongue and sort of cows him into position. When Theoden is trying to kind of like, hey, Grima, you used to serve me like loyally at one point, like just, leave this man, come with me. Saruman's like, shut up, basically slave. And because of this slight, Grima decides to kill him.
Yeah,
and stabs him. They both fall all the way down.
Legolas shoots Grima.
Oh yeah, Legolas shoots Grima, and Saruman's body falls
and lands on like the
spike of like one of his wicked like what I don't know what it would be like some big. It's like a big spinning wheel thing that must have been used for something. I mean, it's like it looks like it's some kind of like a dam thing, but there's no reason that would be there for. I mean, there's like no water. So nonetheless, he falls on this thing. It slowly turns into the water, and he's just, put under water.
And from the water, I believe it
is
Pippin that notices the Palantir, which is like a crystal ball.
Yeah. So it's, and we see this you see it in the first movie. You see it in the second movie being used by Saruman. You see, originally it was Gandalf when he was first speaking with Saruman, when he was betrayed by him originally. And Saruman reveals, he's like, hey, look, let's use the Palantir. And Gandalf is like, no, like using the Palantir is as dangerous because Sauron has a Palantir, and if he could interact with you, or he could force his power over you through it. And so Pippin finds it, and Gandalf quickly takes it away from him, and is like, hey, here, give me that. Like, this is dangerous. And yeah, they basically, after they resolve that sort of confrontation and move on to basically
they return to Edoras.
Yeah, to have a celebration, basically, like, oh, Isengard's been completely conquered, and we defeated the army
at Helm's Deep. Yeah.
So
celebration is had.
Yeah,
it's a fun night.
Yeah, much drinkering, much fun is had, and everybody takes to rest after a few interactions. Aragorn speaking with Gandalf and Legolas and Gimli, and some fun, and the hobbits dancing on tables. Oh, before we get too far, one thing I wanted to note: the difference between the book and the movies is that Saruman does not die there in the tower in the books. In fact, Saruman goes on to basically he is cast out. Like, they're like, go, and like, you are, like, I've taken your power and you go now. Like, you go and harm nobody else. And so from there on, that point, Saruman goes on in disguise as he goes to the Shire and basically like turns over like a revolt in the Shire and like takes it over and like corrupts the Shire. And acts, and he like is in disguise as like some leader hobbit, and yeah, basically just like makes the Shire shitty, and like under his sort of command, like he acts like he's a guy in command of the Shire, and like is corrupting it. And when the hobbits return, they actually at the end they return basically like heroes, but essentially like lead a bunch of the hobbits in a rebellion against this new little weird regime that's going on.
I could see that not being necessary to the story and tacking on to a already, some say, long ending.
Yes, exactly. So it is not like necessarily anything that really,
because this is all occurring after after they've already won.
Yeah, exactly. This all just happens when they return home, and but yeah, they like basically lead a little rebellion, force their way, to pass like this, this little disguise Saruman, find out it is Saruman in disguise that's leading them, and then Grima kills him.
I don't know if you'll be able to particularly recall this, but according to Wikipedia right now, it references that Saruman and Grima do not only appear in the extended cut. So is the Saruman death scene not in the theatrical release of the film? Do they just get there and they retrieve the Palantir from the wreckage?
No, because is it? I forget. Actually, it's been so long since I watched a theatrical that maybe they just find the Palantir. Maybe that's how they cut it. They might just say that like they found it and it's in the. But I feel it. I don't know. It's been so long. I really can't remember.
It seems like a weird thing to not include, but that's just what Wikipedia says. So I don't know if that's accurate.
For saving time, I could see why they might not include the Saruman being killed part. They could just be like, well, hey, look, they found the Palantir. Like, all this stuff got wrecked, and something happened to Saruman, and whatever, it resolved itself.
Yeah, Saruman was basically beat at the end of the Two Towers.
Yeah,
killing him at the beginning of the Return of the King isn't technically necessary, but it feels good to see.
Yeah, no, it's understanding why if he doesn't die in the theatrical version, or we don't see that. I think no. I think you do still see him die. I think there's less of the confrontation. There's less of the conversation to it.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's like a part where like Saruman casts like a firebolt at Gandalf, and like he like absorbs it and stuff. And I know that that's not an extended version thing. So I think there's a little more to it added on, but I'm pretty sure we do still see Saruman die in the theatrical.
Regardless, we get back to the sleeping after the night of merriment, and we've noticed at this point that Pip, after seeing the Palantir the first time, he keeps thinking about it. His mind keeps being drawn to it. It's almost as if it has a similar draw as the Ring of Power.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the middle of the night, he sneaks off and he takes it from Gandalf and he looks into it, and bad stuff.
Yeah, and bad stuff, and it,
But also good stuff.
yeah, also technically good stuff, and it alights, and there's like we see it like light up in like the shining light, like it's on fire, and he's like, it's like won't like release from Pippin. Merry wakes up Aragorn and Gandalf. They force it from his hands and recover it, and in the morning it's revealed that Gandalf, after like basically interrogating, figuring out what it was that Pippin, his interaction was, Pippin did not reveal anything about, like, it was literally Sauron, like, piercing into Pippin's mind and like, forcing information. He was tortuously forcing information from him, like magically, mentally. But he did not reveal anything about Frodo and Sam, only that he knew about the ring. And so basically there was, and in the connection to his mind, Pippin saw something in Sauron's mind, which was, a great white city with a white tree. And so they, not only did they essentially deceive Sauron a little bit to make him think that Pippin is the Hobbit with the ring,
yeah,
but that they now know that Sauron's next target is to attack Minas Tirith, the main city in Gondor. And so now they know that they must go warn them and potentially marshal forces and go to their aid, because this is where a great, like Sauron's, forces are going to be going. Theoden, though, hearing this, says, where was Gondor when we needed assistance? Like, I'm not sending more of my men to die. And he's maybe not, in the wake of such a, huge battle where he lost a bunch of men, he's not like at this point willing to,
or eager
to run off to a potential battle right now. But Gandalf says, we need to go, and I need to take you with me, Pippin. I need to at least go to Minas Tirith and warn them that there's something coming and that they need to be prepared. So Gandalf takes Pippin with him.
And Aragorn, he basically trusts Aragorn to try and convince Theoden to rally the troops to the seat of Aragorn's throne.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a moment where Pippin and Merry basically say goodbye, because this is the first time that they'll have been separated on this entire journey. And we can assume that they, like these guys are like best friends, and like the separation is going to be, it'll be a little difficult for them.
It's interesting that in this movie we see the separation of both Hobbit pairs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, maybe there's something to be said for that. Maybe there's a meaning to it.
It gives each Hobbit a chance to stand on their own for a time.
And go on their own sort of growth and journey a little bit, as opposed to them just being the Hobbits. Like, and I obviously at this point, Frodo and Sam have separated and Merry and Pippin have separated. But we get moments where we get to see all of them like become their, like show a side of being a Hobbit that is like being their best selves, and also in some ways their worst selves.
For maybe not for all, but
not for all. So, but yeah, we see them, like being in this world of men, and how it sort of, changes them and how they have to adapt and
complicates and evolves these characters.
Yeah. And that is one thing I think even about Return of the King that maybe is satisfying, is that here is where you really see these, the Hobbits have basically just been like fun, whatever Hobbits. And in Two Towers, you see some of the suffering, some of the pushing through, the fortitude that Hobbits have. But here's where you really see like the bravery that Hobbits have, the courage.
I think I referenced this in the Two Towers podcast, but at the end of the Two Towers, the Hobbits have gone through some stuff, but the stuff that they go through in this movie, like, is like makes the first two films seem like baby stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think this is one of those points in this movie that really adds to its significance. Why this movie, I don't know if it's why it won awards, but why in some ways
it won the award for the trilogy as a whole. Yeah. Like not to bring down this specific movie, but after you get those three movies, like they weren't going to give awards to the Two Towers because it's a middle point. They needed to see where it landed, and they gave it awards then.
Yeah. But it is, this is a point that this movie has that the other ones really don't quite hit. There is a little bit in, in the Fellowship where you have Frodo and Sam, like them moving from this place of like safety and where they're the typical kind of almost hero's journey where you're moving them from this like the known world into the unknown world and seeing that sort of transition and how they have to deal using aid from their guides and mentors to adapt, overcome, and sort of like move into the new position that they have to be in to succeed. But it's less pronounced. They still seem like they're just like kind of like happy-go-lucky hobbits, and they're just especially like Merry and Pippin don't really feel like they make much of a transition, by the end of Fellowship of the Ring. Two Towers, again, even in Two Towers, you don't really get so much of it.
Here's the thing: in the Two Towers, Merry and Pippin are in the forest the whole time, pretty much. Like once they get out of the hands of the orcs, they're just walking through the forest and talking to Treebeard, and then Treebeard and the Ents and the trees, they're the ones that battle in Isengard. They're never in any real danger in that movie. And then,
to say that
I went with the orcs, past the point of the orcs, but that was set up in the first movie. It's just resolving the Fellowship in that way. And Frodo and Sam, they're dealing with Smeagol, who for the most part isn't a immediate threat to them in the Two Towers. And then they're dealing with Faramir, who you at least have some comfort in knowing it's a human they're dealing with. And a human who I don't know if it's just me, but when I saw Faramir, even though he was like being like an antagonist to the quest, I had a good feeling about him because he's a human. I figured he would figure it out, and he's Boromir's brother, and I know Boromir's a good person, so I felt that in the end, Boromir was a good man, and so I had some feeling that his brother would end up being a good man too. So, like, the biggest threat to the hobbits in that second movie was whether or not this human man would do the right thing, and whether or not the beginning of the movie rescue would happen. And this movie, however, things get different. But let's get back into the story. So Gandalf and Pippin are off to Minas Tirith.
Yeah, Gandalf and Pippin, they head off to Minas Tirith, and basically they arrive.
At this point, we can go into Frodo and Sam.
No, because I think so. I believe that Gandalf is there and has arrived.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, in Minas Tirith before this happens, because there's a scene that's sort of important, like something that they see. And so Gandalf arrives. He comes there with Pippin. Pippin and Gandalf go before
Denethor.
Denethor, yeah.
The father of Faramir and Boromir.
Yes, and the steward of Gondor. And Gandalf basically says, hey, the enemy is coming to your door. You need to be prepared. Like, they're going to be sending, he informs him what's going on. Denethor is like, why didn't you tell me about my boy being dead? Like, like I know that my son is dead, and I'm aware. He shows his cloven horn of Gondor, and is distraught. He's certainly like, this is like, disturbed me, and you come now telling me this, but none of your party came to tell me that my son was dead. And he's a little like standoffish with Gandalf. Pippin, in the moment when he's talking about that, he says, hey, I was there, your son died defending me, I will pledge my service to you in regard for that debt. And Denethor accepts, and he's like, all right, well, fine, cool. At this time, Faramir also comes and reports. One thing. No,
we're not there yet.
Oh, is this not when Faramir showed up to report that?
No, now we can. So they leave and they see the tree and they have that conversation.
Yeah,
because Frodo and Sam see the troops lead to go to where Faramir is, driving Faramir out.
Yeah.
So we have to do Frodo and Sam before Faramir shows up. Yeah,
because Frodo and Sam, we have them, and they arrive at this just dank, like glowing green city with these like, these like ghastly looking gargoyles out before it, Minas Morgul, where the kingdom of the Lich King, the Witch King.
based on the names, I'm assuming it's basically the bad equivalent of a Minas Tirith. The
Yes.
Tirith and Morgul.
Yeah, it is literally like a city that used to belong to men of Gondor. It was called uh it was called I can't remember exactly what it was called. Like, it might have been like Ithilien or like Minas, something, but it wasn't Minas Morgul, and it was like in like a more older age, like they attacked and took that city over and took it as their own. Mordor did, the forces of evil. But so we see them there, and they are led past these, and Frodo gets this calling, like something calling him towards the city a little bit, and he's dragged back by Smeagol and Sam, and they make their way. After watching, as referenced, this huge army of men, let forth in a crazy orcs. Sorry, not men, yeah, orcs, and this like glowing green blast into the sky, shoot out, and it is seen that this green blast is seen by Gandalf and Pippin from where they are, and all the people in Minas Tirith see it as well. Like they're all seeing this green glow that's like putting this darkness into the air, and people are like kind of like, what the fuck is that? They're tripping out a little bit over it. That's why we had to. I remembered that that Gandalf and Pippin had to get to Minas Tirith before, because they see that from there.
Yeah.
And we have them basically proceed and start climbing up this. I mean, you could say stairway, but it's practically up the side of the cliff.
It's a stairway carved into a cliff, so it's not like easy steps. It's more like climbing a continual ledges.
Yeah, I mean, it is like it's carved in a way where you almost barely notice it. I mean, it looks nearly like the mountainside that they're climbing up. And man, I always remember like seeing that and just like, I don't know. Every time I see it, I think I'm like, that looks so like not something I ever want to climb on. Like
it's in the middle of it's not quite into Mordor yet, but it's right on the barrier of Mordor, so it's scary. It's not. It's not a place you want to be.
I mean, I'm just thinking from like the perspective of like climbing something. I mean, I guess like
but it's also like a dark cliff face.
Yeah, it just looks like the worst thing I would ever not want to climb. But so we have that, and they basically begin their climb up this, steep stairway.
Though we're also seeing it from the perspective of a hobbit, so it's a question of what it looks like to climb for a man, which it actually may mean that the ledges are smaller and it's harder to climb for a normal sized person.
Huh. Oh, that's actually a good note that I never really thought of. But yeah, we're looking at it as if they are hobbits. So it'd be like a child climbing the same kind of steps.
So it's probably a harder climb because they're actually having to climb more, but they have more room. So like when we see them like take breaks and lie down, that same space is probably not afforded to a normal person.
Right. Yeah. So we see them begin that journey up. And then we cut back to, who are we cutting back to now?
It's the Witch King's forces are descending onto Osgiliath, yes.
Yeah.
Where Faramir and his forces are, and basically they're overwhelmed by the orc forces and they have to retreat back to Minas Tirith.
Yeah, we see them overwhelmed. They begin retreating, and while they're retreating, the ring wraiths flying on their drakes come in and are harrying the men that are trying to retreat on horses. And Gandalf rides out and, with his staff lets out, this beam of light that basically like shunts the ring wraiths off and safeguards the men to make it back into Minas Tirith. And on Faramir's return, he goes to his father and says, "Father, we've lost Osgiliath. Like they completely overwhelmed us." And
he also informs Denethor that he let go of the Ring of Power, or maybe his troops do, but he admits to what was noted in the second movie as basically breaking a law, or like going against Denethor's wishes.
Yeah. And this Pippin is here in this moment, in his garb, which there was like a moment where Gandalf saw him putting on his tabard and the servicemen of Gondor, and he's there, just like basically on guard, being like a servant to Denethor. And in this moment, Denethor's like eating, and it's like this moment, Denethor, it seems so like lacking in care, very accusatory to his son. Like, you lost Osgiliath where your brother would have held it, and you let this go. Like he just doesn't like care about his son. Like, and he just like basically ends up saying, and I believe Gandalf is here for this. He ends up saying, he's like, well, I think your brother would go retake the city, and puts it to him like, you need to go retake the city, go do it. And Faramir tries to make it clear there's no way, like they are holding the city, and like it would it's not, it wouldn't happen. And Denethor sort of like implies, he's like, I don't care, make it happen, do it. And Faramir just feels like he's like, you're sending me on this is like a death march, like we won't return from this kind of thing. And Denethor, he just doesn't care. He's like, yeah, do it, do it. Are you worthy of being the captain of the guard? And so Faramir agrees, knowing that he is like
basically marching to his death.
Yeah,
that his father sending him to die.
Yeah, and accepts that, and has this I can't remember exactly the words, but he says just like, maybe after this, like you'll like have thought of me as fondly as you thought of Boromir.
Yeah, it's really sort of like messed up relationship Faramir has with his father. It's why don't play favorites. Love your kids equally. Like, even if you have a favorite, don't tell them.
Yeah, I mean, hey, sometimes when that you're not the favorite, it makes you like try to be better and stuff. Like, I knew that both our parents hated me and that you were the favorite, and that just made me try to be a better person. They still don't love me as much as you, but whatever.
See, but like, here's the thing. I was always like, maybe they love me more, but maybe they don't love the real me. They love the idea of me. Whereas they probably, if they knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me and I wouldn't be a favorite. Which honestly, I don't even think I'm really the favorite. I'm just the younger, and like there's like dynamics with that. So, but hey.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no favorite. They love us equally. But so this moment, and this moment is really punctuated by like Denethor's like eating, like grossly eating while telling his like son to go away. And it's just like this, you just get this like feeling from Denethor. I don't know. Did you get this? Like where you're just like kind of disgusted by the man?
Oh, I did not like him at all, but that's the point.
Yeah. And yeah, they're really painting it out like, so you don't like him.
I didn't like him in the second movie when he was mean to Faramir and like overly like, Boromir's the only kid I care about. Like, that put me in a bad opinion of this dude, and there's no quality to this man in Return of the King that is likable.
Yeah.
Other than he has two cool sons.
Yeah. So one thing, so no, like I like kind of like talking about the books and mentioning some of the stuff I remember from it, but there's an explanation for why. So like Denethor in this movie, he's made out to just be like an unlikable guy, but a little bit like how in the movies Boromir's painted a little less noble and good as he is in the books. In this, there's a reason that we understand why Denethor is like this, and it's not mentioned in the movies at all because it's not necessarily super important to it. But Denethor, they have a Palantir in Minas Tirith, and Denethor has been using the Palantir to gain an edge. But Sauron has basically been putting fake images into the Palantir of Denethor seeing his city fall and be corrupted, and them like losing. And so Denethor believes that these are visions of the future, and he basically like is convinced, like it kind of drives him mad and convinces him that like we are destined to fail here, like we're gonna fail. And
honestly, yeah, we haven't gotten quite to the point of his madness, but like he does seem to be sort of unpromptedly crazy. Like I could see the death of his son and seeing the troops and the Green Spire and all that putting fear into a person's heart, but like he goes from, or we don't even know, he just seems like he's crazy, a little bit crazy to begin with.
Yeah,
over the loss of Boromir. That's really the only thing that would prompt him being this way within the film. So knowing that in the book, that's the explanation, it makes his character make more sense.
Yeah, in the movie they frame it as this like loses Boromir, already sets him off, like has this like this relationship with his sons where he thinks of the his younger as like a lesser, and then loses his lesser and realizes like I've lost both of my kids now, and it like drives him insane. That's how they pose in the movie.
Yeah,
But in the books, it's really like, no, he's been like magically tampered with through his use of the Palantir and has been predisposed to basically be insane. Like he's already thinks that he not only has had his mind like messed with, but like thinks that they're going to fail, like they're going to die. And when these armies like show up, he's like, oh, this is it. We're going to lose. And so he kind of just like, throws it all away. Like he's just like, oh, I don't care anymore. He's been like shaken and like purposefully made like that. So it makes him like, and it implies that Denethor is not like that, like that he was also strong, noble, man that was leading Gondor for some time. And that this was more the reason that ended up happening. And so like in the movies, it just portrays him like he was a piece of shit, which, to give him maybe some credit from the original text, like he wasn't a total piece of shit. Like he was kind of, like he was put and made that way. But in this movie, like, fuck that. He's just a piece of shit. So,
all right. So at this point within the story, the movie weaves it very well, very artistic. Really, one of the best things about these movies is the way that it weaves in between multiple storylines in a way where anytime you go to the other storyline, you're like, oh, great, I want to see more of this. But you also feel like, oh, but I want to see more of what I was just watching too, which is always a great skill to have when you're weaving multiple storylines together. But it does make it hard for us to recap. And Wikipedia's plot synopsis at this point basically breaks it down into what Frodo and Sam do up until the point where they see the forces and they're stopped, and the going to and the Battle of Minas Tirith are basically two separate things at this point. So which one do you want to tackle first?
Well, I think one of those leads into what the real finale of the movie is, and where all the stories come back together. So I think we should go with the Minas Tirith, and
it is the bulk of the story as well. It's going to be faster to get through the other one.
Yeah.
So back with Aragorn.
Yeah. So back with Aragorn and Theoden. So what actually does happen though? I think we actually have to go back just a little bit. So we have Faramir has been sent on this charge, and we see him and the men are like slowly coming out. Actually, I think I just realized I was getting stuff wrong. During that conversation with Faramir, he was not eating food. Eating food happens when he is he's sitting on his throne and talking with, like, this is when Gandalf and Faramir are both there, and then we see Faramir being let out. Gandalf is like, don't do this. Like, like that you're not supposed to do this. And Faramir is like, I must. Like, it is the command of my king. Even like Gandalf knows that he's going to his death. Faramir knows that he's going to his death, but he's like, I have to. It's like, whatever. Yeah. My life is worth nothing. My father like basically doesn't give a shit about me. I might as well die trying to do something noble anyways. And we see these men basically getting ready and to head out and leave. And then this really what a beautifully put together moment with the music and like the back and forth of showing what's happening as Faramir and his men begin to make their way, and they begin this charge while Denethor, this is when he's eating. This is when he's just like disgustedly eating, and you're just like, oh, what a like piece of shit. Like literally he sent these men to die, and he's just like over here fucking gorging himself. And he asks Pippin to sing, and Pippin sings this song that this mournful.
Oh, I remember this scene. This is actually really well put together.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. Like key scene. I think a lot of people remember from Return of the King, just how it's punctuated with Pippin's sorrowful song while they're being, they're marching to their deaths, and we see the orcs, lining up all their bows, hundreds of archers ready to just rain arrows down on this
basically small garrison.
Yeah, I mean it's a like a few dozens of men, versus again just like hundreds of archers, and they're just on open plains. There's no, like this is
an attempt to retake a fortress that they already lost.
Yeah, a fortress that's heavily fortified, people, and with like a
with
company
less people than you had before.
Yeah, with a company of cavalry, which is just like, I mean, any people that like know somewhat about war and tactics is archers versus cavalry. Unless you have archers, or unless the cavalry are on the archers, it's basically a loss. Like,
yeah, because basically what they need to do is siege the base that they lost, and they're not going to do that with a bunch of horses.
Yeah, exactly. And so we basically see, without seeing it inherently, we see Faramir and his men are just cut down by these arrows. It doesn't show it, but again, it's so well put together where we just see them loose their arrows quietly, like, and that's and the end of Pippin's song. Yeah. And we just know that they were probably all, put down.
But
And it's just a sorrowful moment there. But
Faramir's body is recovered.
yes, but Faramir's body somehow basically like makes it like his horse makes it back, and he is on the verge of death. And brought forth to Denethor, and Denethor is distraught to find that now he cares. Now it would seem he's distraught to find like my son is dead. He believes his son is dead, even though Pippin identifies he's not really dead, and he's trying to tell him that.
Yeah.
But prior to this, though, an important thing has happened. That Gandalf this is when Gandalf, I think, originally was pleading with Denethor to light the fires, call for aid from Rohan.
Yeah.
And Denethor was like, no, we don't need, the horse lords don't care. They won't come to our aid. I won't stoop to even calling for their help. Right. So Gandalf basically, incites Pippin to
go up and light the pyre himself.
Yep. And Pippin lights the pyre, and it is lit all the way across, and it is seen all the way in Rohan. And Aragorn runs in to tell Theoden, like the beacons are lit. Gondor calls for aid. Will you answer the call? And now in this moment, Theoden, even though he previously did not wish to go forth, really on his own, like, I'm not going to send my people out here when they haven't called. But Gondor does call. He hears that they have called for aid, and Theoden says, all right, let's go. Let's do it. We will go to their aid. And, in this time, like, it is greater than all of us, and we need to be there. And they called. They did, like, these beacons were there for a reason. So at this time, we have Faramir and all these things happening, but we know the parallel story that's happening is Aragorn and Theoden, Legolas, Gimli,
they're gathering the Rohirrim army.
Yeah, the Rohirrim have been gathered, and they are now making their way as fast as they can to Gondor. And along the way, they are set up when they're getting close to Gondor, when the battle is coming close to time. And during this time, Aragorn receives a visit from someone in the night. He is visited by Elrond, who has come to present to him the reforged sword of Narsil, now Anduril, the Flame of the West. Which, note from the book, Aragorn was to receive that sword before they left Rivendell in the book. Like, he's had that sword the whole time.
That makes sense, and it was kind of weird to see Elrond just appear.
Yeah.
But he also is able to share with him the message that Arwen is dying.
Yeah, that her power, her livelihood is tied to the Evenstar, tied to this world, that the evil being, like, her staying within this realm. If the evil does, basically, if Aragorn doesn't win, if evil is not, like, put down, like, she will fade. And, like, it doesn't really clearly say. I don't even recall from the book to say why this is or what this means. I think it's something to do with, like, her, in the movie, it's implied something like she gave some kind of power to Aragorn, and if he does not, like, succeed, then, like, she will be, like, she is weak to the evil or the corruption that exists, and she, it will overcome her if they cannot, defeat it.
Yeah.
But it's not very clear what exactly it all means. It's sort of, like, implied, and I don't frankly remember even in the book that being, like, much of a thing. Because, again, there's no moment where Elrond shows up in the book and says, here's the sword, and my daughter's, like, dying. That's just not, it's not really in the book. He gets the sword before he leaves. He grants that to, they reforge the sword and give it to him before he leaves.
And Aragorn is basically, Elrond's basically at this point telling Aragorn, like, hey, this is the sword of the king, and you're going to your throne. You need to reclaim your throne.
Yeah. And he also says that, like, if you, like, that you need to go and summon, like, aid from, like, you will not win this battle, and you need to summon aid from somewhere else, someone that only that will serve the king of Gondor. Like, you need to walk here. And they have basically camped outside of this, like, odd pass that has been referenced prior to this conversation as being, like, like, the dead live down there, and we get a little flash of, like, seeing almost like a ghost in it and stuff, and it's referenced like this is the path of the dead, and that we find that the story is explained to us that long ago there was a city, a kingdom here that swore allegiance to Gondor, and in Gondor's time of need they called upon them and they did not answer, and so they were cursed as oathbreakers and literally cursed to to die and exist as these tortured ghostly forms.
And so we see Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas because Aragorn wanted to go off on his own, but Gimli and Legolas, they're his buds. They set out on this quest with him, and they're going to finish it with him.
Yeah.
So they leave the Rohirrim troops, and there is like the sense of the troops to like see Aragorn basically leave, and they think, is he abandoning the fight? But I think it is a good opportunity for Theoden to establish himself as his own leader, because I don't know. I get the sense that like Aragorn's the really inspiring figure amongst this. Like,
Yeah.
he's being a kingly person, but Theoden is still able to quash the sort of doubts that would naturally arise when basically Aragorn, like the
hero,
when he leaves, there is going to be some doubt sowed through the army, but Theoden is able to basically
inspire his troops and say, hey, you know what? Even if he's leaving, like, we're still going to this battle and we will fight to the death and we will go give it our all. Like, and it is important. This is not just for us or any one person. This is for all of man. And, you know, he inspires his troops. One thing that's we left out a little bit was that when they were leaving Edoras, that Mary wanted to go with them, but they were like, you know, nobody will take you on their horse. Like, nobody can look after you.
I was gonna bring this up, but I didn't know if you wanted to save it for when they come up in the battle. But yes,
yeah. So I mean, it's important to know that, like, but you know, in disguise, Eowyn brings Mary with her,
who is entrusted to be the steward of Edoras while the king was away.
Yeah. So, you know, they think that she's in charge, but really she is, you know, she says, I'm not leaving. I'm not missing another battle. So not only does she disguise herself and join the army, but she brings Mary with her.
Yeah.
And, you know, so she is along for this ride. Now, while the Rohirrim continue their march and they continue on to go and aid Gondor, Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas proceed down into this dark tunnels, into these paths, and eventually they emerge into this, like, you know, underground, almost city-like area. And they are confronted with literally thousands of these ghostly forms, and the king leader of this, you know, city of ghosts, and comes before Aragorn and, you know, is like, who are you? What are you doing here? Aragorn says, like, I come to, you know, call you to fulfill your oaths. And he says, only the king can, you know, call me to fulfill these oaths, and you are no king. And, you know, he goes to, like, strike him and cut him down, and Aragorn is able to block his sword because he has the reforged sword of Narsil, the sword of the king, and because he is the king. And the ghost almost doesn't believe him, but Aragorn is like, no, like, in this moment, this is almost symbolic, right? Of that, up to maybe this point in the movie, we have had Aragorn has, like, not fully wanted to realize this being the king. He's been, you know, the ranger, and he's been on this journey helping Frodo, because, like, to think about it, like, him not having immediately gone to Gondor and say, all right, I'm going to go be the king and, like, lead Gondor now, right? Yeah. Like, why didn't he just do that from the beginning? Like, why was he going on this quest?
Because in a way, he had no right to. He didn't feel he had the right to, and others would have just seen him as this, yeah, you have a bloodline, but what have you done?
Yeah, exactly, right? And I think that Aragorn, being such a noble, like, truly noble in his heart, felt the same thing. He was like, I don't deserve this, really. Like, I'm not the king, really. Even though he is the rightful heir, he never felt like he deserved that. But in this moment, when he needs to come defend his people, he was like, I will be the king that I have to be to save Gondor and the world, essentially. Like, save everyone. I will rise to what I'm supposed to do. And in that moment there, saying, like, you know, even we could say, like, maybe he has the blood and he has the sword, but, like, that's almost him saying, like, I am the king. You know, like, I am the king and I will call you to fulfill your oath. And the ghost basically respects it.
Well, I don't know if it's different from the extended to theatrical, but at first it seems as if the ghosts rebuke them because they're basically cast out of the crumbling cavern. But once they appear outside, the ghosts appear with them and basically answer the call. Yeah.
And so Aragorn does enlist the aid of a ghostly army to come in and aid them in this battle.
And then we see them basically come upon these the ship riding the bad humans on the enemy side. We see them come across one of these ships and they take it over with the dead army. And that's basically, we don't see Aragorn until they appear in the battle.
Yeah, and they know about these ships because Gandalf was the one that he basically told them. He said, "Hey, there are gonna be some ships. Like there are gonna be men coming down the rivers and ships coming that need to be like attended to. Like the reinforcements will be like coming from the rivers." And so they knew about that because of that. So at this point, now we come to Minas Tirith, and before Minas Tirith, the armies of Sauron are coming forth.
So we casually mentioned the fact that Denethor at this point is basically driven to madness, and so Gandalf is basically forced to be to take over the leader of this army.
Yeah, Denethor literally like yells out. He says like, "Flee, like all of you, like it is doomed." Like he screams to his people like out loud so they all can hear him that it is doomed. Like flee for your lives and really does not do anything to help the situation.
And Gandalf is like just has to basically go around and rally the forces. Like, no, we're fighting.
Yeah,
we're gonna do this. Like, have some honor. Basically, like, Denethor is just being a big mess this whole battle.
Old baby little bitch. But yeah, so Denethor like retreats into and takes his son, and he tells his men like bring wood and oil. We're gonna burn my son like the kings of old. Like we're yada yada. And Pippin sees this and is like, wait, what are you doing? Like he tries to stop. He says Faramir's not dead. Like he notices that Faramir is breathing and still alive, and is sort of trying to prevent this amongst all this craziness and madness as the huge armies of Mordor are coming forth, like more troops than even were at Helm's Deep, with massive siege towers that are prepared to and catapults that are prepared to siege this much greater city than Helm's Deep was.
Yeah.
The entire this huge array of fields before Minas Tirith are full of ranks of orcs, and it is impressive. I mean, I think we looked up the figures, because we were talking about how many orcs were at Helm's Deep, and can you do you remember what it was? I think it said like something. It was like 150,000 were supposed to have been at Minas Tirith, and I think it was something like a fraction of that was at Helm's Deep.
I can't immediately see it, but we can let's while you look that up. Basically, this is happening throughout the battle, but basically what happens with Denethor and Faramir. Denethor is basically taking Faramir to be set afire on a pyre with himself. Like he wants to kill himself and his son, who he thinks is dead but isn't really dead. Pippin grabs Gandalf, and they're able to basically stop this from happening. They're able to take Faramir off the fire, but Denethor catches fire and basically runs off a ledge, like burning with flames, like having given up.
Yeah, Lily just flies off, and the battle is basically raging by this point. Gandalf has already marshaled the forces, and the forces are attacking the Sauron's army, which I did confirm 150,000 in the army that was besieging Minas Tirith, which is just like ridiculous. I mean, like that's small countries of people, like cities. Actually, no, it's like cities worth of people. I guess maybe not. I guess there probably are countries with 150,000 people, but
I don't know if you remember this. When do we see that the tree has so the white tree of Gondor of Minas Tirith is basically left essentially dying because it can't bloom without the rightful king on the throne.
Yeah.
But at some point, I can't remember the exact point, but at some point we see a bit of life on the tree, and I can't remember when that happens, but I feel like it happens during the battle, but I'm not certain.
I'm not sure, because that's like an extended edition thing. If if it was displayed, but so we have this battle occurring. The city is being besieged, and they are like attacking the gates, and it's looking bad. Like the gates the main gates are like busted down by this massive battering ram, and Gandalf is there trying to lead the troops, defending the courtyards, but they're being pushed in to retreat.
And it is at this time that Theoden and the Rohirrim army arrive on the scene.
Yeah, they arrive with the light at their backs, though. Like the sky's been cast in darkness, and that was kind of the green beam that went out was like a preceding darkness that was supposed to be covering the skies to further put fear and like take away their hope. With the literally darkness encroaching. And like Ryan said, we have Theoden and them arrive, prepared. He rides along, has the Rohirrim ready to hack their flanks, and the Rohirrim rush in and crash in and really are beating down like successfully on the orcs. They are actually like, I can't say that they are like winning the day, but they are turning it more in the tide of men. And that is when when the Oliphants come in, these war Oliphants with men on their backs, and just like they come in and just start tearing men up. Like, and it's just so rough to see that. Like, I mean, war is already terrible, but it just seems so one-sided when these huge siege elephants come in and they're just wrecking through all the Rohirrim. Just like there's nothing they can do about it. Like they're firing some arrows and things, but it's just
like I think before some reinforcements come, I think the troops on the ground are maybe able to take out one Oliphant, like after like a besiege of the Oliphants basically taking out a ton of men, they're able to maybe get one down before we see later reinforcements. But during this time, we also have Theoden basically have a one-off with the Witch King.
Yeah, the Witch King comes down and challenges Theoden, and basically, I mean, like, it's really not much of a challenge. He basically, takes him down, whips him up around on his horse, and tosses him to the ground. And
right when he's about to finish him off, this knight or this armored soldier from the battle, Éowyn, shows up and
lops off the head of his Drake.
Yeah, with the help of Merry, he's able to. Or she's able to kill the Witch King.
Yeah, which another note from the book. So back in the Fellowship of the Ring, we have a whole section that's totally skipped over, right? There's a thing about Tom Bombadil. They go through the Old Forest. After the Old Forest, they go to the Barrow Downs, and they encounter basically some ancient wraith ghosts. And during this time, all four of the hobbits are it might just be not Frodo, the other three hobbits. All of them gain these barrow daggers. So like the swords that are given to them by
Galadriel,
not Galadriel, Aragorn. Aragorn gives them a couple blades, right? Like, oh, here's some swords, you need weapons, right? In the original story, and this is actually a thing that because they left it out, it makes no sense why what Merry does anything, right? But it's because he has literally a special dagger made for killing wraiths. It's literally a weapon made for killing undead creatures. Yeah. And so when he goes up in this moment, we see that the Witch King is fighting Éowyn and like really kind of beating her down. She's standing against him and stuff, but he like destroys her shield and like breaks her arm. And Merry comes up and stabs him in the back of the leg with this dagger. Because he stabbed him, the real reason that Éowyn is able to kill the Witch King is not because she's a woman, but it's because Merry basically weakened him to a state where he was mortalized and could be killed at that point with his dagger. Yep. But even with that, they do successfully. Éowyn, I am no man moment, which again, another one of those iconic Lord of the Rings moments, stabs the Witch King right in the face and slays him.
Yeah, honestly, I
temporarily slays him.
I get how it makes more sense in the book, and there's a certain level of, oh, that's like something set up in Fellowship being paid off in Return of the King. That's cool. But I do like the I cannot be felled by man. I am no man. I think that works better. And I want to talk about Éowyn later, about how I didn't really like her that much in Two Towers, but this moment, it's just so triumphant for her. Like, yeah. It is such a, and the fact that happens with her and Merry, it's such a cool just thing to witness.
Yeah, no, it is an excellent moment. I do love the I am no, man. It is a really cool, like, reveal, triumphant sort of thing. And not to take away from it by telling the, in the book reason. I just think it's
just adding.
Yeah, it adds a little background and it actually makes the whole thing make more sense. Like, why is stabbing him in the back of the leg something that like cripples him to the ground and makes it so that she can kill him? Like, he should just be like, yeah, cool story. Like, I'm literally an undead ghost. Like,
And so after the Witch King is felled, she goes to her uncle, and basically he ends up dying in her arms.
Yeah, but she's there to be there for his last moments, and it's kind of like a touching thing. She defended him, saved him, and he almost. I think in this moment, it's also a little bit of a. She got to be like, she's like, I'm a strong warrior woman, and constantly it's been like, no, you're a woman. I mean, we get that you're strong, but you need to stay here. And in the moment, it was like, no, like, look at this, I saved you here in this moment. And he sees her, recognizes her in that moment as like knowing that like I know you are that strong woman, and you will he's like, it's okay that I'm leaving behind all of this to you, because you are that kind of person. Like, Rohan's in good hands.
Yeah.
So it's a cool, powerful moment. But this is almost like a turning of the battle. I mean, their leader has been destroyed, and at this moment
is when Aragorn and the army of the dead arrive.
Yeah, they've taken over all the ships that were supposed to be their reinforcements and destroyed their forces, and now the army of the dead arrives and basically just is an unstoppable force.
Not only is it an unstoppable force, but we see, I believe it's Legolas, is able to just go up and take down one Oliphant all on his own.
Yeah, he literally solos a whole Oliphant. Of course, ultra badass.
And I'll say that I think that's my favorite sequence of the battle.
Yeah,
is just watching Legolas take down what was such a crazy threat to so many.
Yeah, it's a very cool moment to watch, and it of course ends with a little funny. He comes down and
it still counts as one.
It still counts as one. I love that too. But at this point, I mean, the battle is basically, with the arrival of Aragorn and the army of the dead, I mean, the battle is basically won. Yeah. The Witch King is slain. And the army of dead it cannot be stopped. Like, they literally just, slaughter any orcs in their way, and they tear through the city and kill any orcs that are left. And they are saved, and the battle is won this day.
And as a reward for helping them win the battle, Aragorn frees the dead.
Yeah, which even at first, against Gimli is like, no, we can use them. Like, there's more that we can do. But Aragorn says, like, no, you came when you were called, you fulfilled your oaths, and you released them. As a good noble king would, right? Like, you did as you were asked. And now I'll release you to your thing, as opposed to using them like some kind of weapon or tool, abusing them, their power.
And in the wreckage of the battle, we have I believe Eowyn reacts to seeing his uncle has been felled. I think Aragorn also reacts to this, his old friend.
Yep. Yeah. They're all, take a moment to, give their respects to Theoden, who came to the aid of Gondor here. And died, for it. But from this, we basically get At
this point, we can hop back. They've won the Battle of Minas Tirith, and they're basically trying to figure out what to do next. And it's a good opportunity to go back to Frodo and Sam.
Yeah, so Frodo and Sam, we have them. They're continuing their climb upwards. And during their climb, there's just more of this doubt and discord being a little bit sown by Gollum. And at one point, Gollum has a sneaky little plot where he takes their food, crumbles some of it on Sam, and tosses it away. And when they awaken, he sort of tricks Frodo, or leads Frodo to believe that Sam is lying when Sam accuses a Gollum of taking their food, and makes it out to look like, no, Sam ate it, and he's just saying this, and he's and
not
Frodo,
only that, he also tells Frodo at one point in a one-on-one, saying that Sam wants the ring. That's Sam's trying to take the ring from Frodo.
Yeah.
And that at one point Sam is going to try to take the ring.
Yeah. And Frodo already in the paranoia that the ring is getting to him. We've seen this slowly as he's being devolved. The ring is constantly beating on his psyche. This, the craving for it, and the effect that it has on anybody, even a hobbit of fortitude, a hobbit that doesn't want power. All they want is to go home. And one of the reasons that hobbits are least affected by the rings, because they don't have any, they don't crave anything that the ring can give them. Still being weakened down in this moment with all this accusation, tells Sam he believes it, and he tells Sam to go. Sam, you need to go. He believes Sam is a danger, and it's just really, man, weak, sad moment where you see Sam breaking down. He's like, I've been with you this whole way.
Please, Mr. Frodo.
Yeah, he doesn't believe him. And man, it's rough, man. Like you just really feel for Sam, where you're like, no, we know that Sam he's being tricked. Frodo, you don't know,
Yeah.
and all this stuff. It's like you're just like screaming internally as you're watching.
And so Frodo and Smeagol continue up the mountain, and Sam starts to head down.
Yeah, and they arrive at this cave that Gollum's been telling them about, the tunnel, the way through. And as they proceed inside, Frodo loses Gollum, can't find him, and begins, seeing that there's webs and dead bodies everywhere, and begins to realize that he thinks he's being led into a trap, and he realizes that there's some great monster here. Shelob,
the giant spider.
Yeah, the giant spider is there and is going to try and kill Frodo and take him. And Gollum led him here and makes it clear,
Can I just say, I spent a long time not knowing there was a big spider in this movie. And when I found out there was a big spider in this movie, it made me very happy that I did not attempt to see this as a kid.
Yeah, I bet. It probably would have freaked you out.
Would not have been happy with that.
Yeah. But Frodo is, using the light of Galadriel to and trying to fend off Shelob, loses his sword, loses his pack, like is covered in webs, but continues on. Still, and the light. I believe he loses the light in there as well. But eventually, against all odds, he makes it out. He gets through the tunnels and makes it out on the other side.
And he's able to confront Gollum about the trap that he basically put him into. Yeah. And at first, like he's sort of able to talk with Gollum, reason out like, why did you betray me? And Gollum seems almost like, I'm sorry.
It's
or
precious.
Yeah. And he says, this is why we must destroy the precious. This is why we must destroy the ring. And I think this is the first time where where Gollum realizes that that's what they were venturing into Mordor to do. Yep. And this enrages Gollum.
Yeah, that is precisely it. Yeah, Gollum has not known up to this point what they were doing, why they were going to Mordor with the ring. And he tells him, he's like, yeah, we're going to destroy it. And Gollum, yeah, he can't take that. Like, he can't take destroying the precious. And they get into an altercation, but Frodo basically like tosses him off like a cliff.
There's like a pit, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a pit, and tosses him off. And Frodo, realizing it's like you see him realizing this betrayal and having like his equipment's all gone.
And he doesn't have Sam.
Yeah, he has nothing. He has nobody, and he's just like, but he just resolves himself to keep moving forward. And he keeps going, and while he is moving, bap, he's Shelob, still alive, has followed him out and stabs him right in the chest with her stinger, and drops him and webs him up.
And I don't know if this detail, in the detail I watched, at some point before this, we see Sam and his venturing down that he discovers the bread that was tossed off, and he realizes he tossed it. He got rid of it, because that was one of the reasons why like Frodo didn't believe that Gollum did anything with it, because Gollum wouldn't have eaten the food. And he didn't eat the food. He just tossed it.
Yeah. And so Sam sees that, and something about it gives him the resolve to turn around. Like, I don't know what exactly, what you would think he has here, but he's like, no, I'm going to go back and convince Frodo I need to be with him. He can't be trusted. And he turns around.
Yeah. It's in that moment that he knows that Gollum played a trick. Like, he has the evidence of it.
Yeah. And so, Frodo's being wrapped up in webs and potentially to be taken away and eaten. When Sam arrives, wielding Sting and wielding Galadriel's light, and basically battles it out with Shelob and wounds her so badly that she retreats and goes and cuts Frodo free from the webs, but Frodo is dead.
Appears to be dead. Yeah.
Yeah. And he, Sam is distraught that he has died, but
here's some orc troops coming.
Yeah, and he goes to hide, and the orc troops show up and find Frodo's body, and one of them, talking aloud, basically makes it clear, this one's not dead yet.
She just paralyzed him.
Yep. And so Frodo, Sam is like, no, oh my God, he's not dead. And so they take Frodo's body away. Sam follows them, and so at this point in the, basically Sam follows them, makes it into their castle, and there is a scene where we see basically like an altercation started between a bunch of the orcs
over who gets the mithril vest.
Yeah, and basically there's a fight that started there, and when Sam arrives, it is essentially like half empty. Like half the orcs are all dead. Yeah. It's only the ones that were left remaining that are there. And in the books, another little note about this, in the books, Sam is he uses the ring basically to like stealth all the way in and he has to go like a whole different way. Like they close like a gate, but like the way that they go, and he has to like go back through Shelob's lair to make it, to find another pass that takes him to where the keep is.
Which
Cirith Ungol, I believe, is actually the name of that castle.
Which I'm glad that they didn't do it that way in the movie, even though like it felt a bit unbelievable that Sam could just like walk his way through.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the reveal that Sam had the ring, that he had taken it off of Frodo's body.
Yeah.
Because there was a sense of urgency I felt watching it that, the orcs have the ring. The orcs have the ring. Like it's lost.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but basically the orcs have like killed a lot of each other, and Sam goes in there and he fights his way through, kills a bunch of orcs, and makes his way all the way up to the tower where he rescues Frodo and reveals to Frodo, who thinks he's like, Sam, they have it. They have the ring. They taken the mithril shirt. They taken all of Frodo's things, and Sam's like, nope, I have it. I saved the ring, because he like thought that Frodo was dead and he was going to continue the journey without him. And
it's at this point that Frodo's able to see, when Frodo asked for the ring back from Sam, Frodo's able to see the hesitancy on Sam's face, and it sort of reinstills that we need to get rid of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the books, it does show that like in Sam's mind, like he is tempted by the ring. He does have this like, oh, I could be Sam the brave, I could be the great, blah blah. Like he is tempted, but he gives it up.
Quick question.
And this actually is a thing, is that Sam, I believe, in the moment when he willingly gives it up to Frodo, is the only ring bearer that ever gives the ring up like willingly when asked for it.
Oh, I could see that.
Yeah. It's like a note. Sam is the only like bearer of the ring that ever gives up the ring willingly.
Well, does Bilbo not give it up willingly?
Oh, I guess I thought I had read that somewhere that he was.
Guess when
he doesn't. He was going to keep the ring and take it with him, and Gandalf had to compel him to give it up.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fair. But yeah, so here we are, and they have the ring, and they are. Yeah. They're in Mordor.
They're in Mordor, and they disguise themselves as orcs, and basically tromp their way through Mordor.
But they see this line of the entire armies basically blocking their passage to Mount Doom.
Yeah, and so
this is where we intersect back.
Yeah, and so at this point, we know the Aragorn, Gandalf, all of them are assembled. Éomer, they're all assembled together, and they're basically like, what are we gonna do? Like, we know that the enemy, enemies there, they're going to be biding their time. Our forces are pretty well fucked. And they basically make a decision. They say, we need to go to the Black Gate and we're going to engage them for the purpose of, like, at this point, Sauron doesn't have the ring. We know that he doesn't have the ring because if he had the ring, then all would be lost. Then we would know that we have failed. But at this point, we have to believe that Frodo and Sam are still trying to get the ring to Mordor, and we need to give them the best chance. We need to draw out his forces so that they are not in between Frodo and Sam getting to Mount Doom. And so they, and Aragorn is like, I am the king now. Like, he has taken up his mantle and says, like, this is what we're going to do, everyone. We're going, and we're going to, like, whether this be our last battle, this is what we have to do then. Like, it's worth it. We need to give them the distraction that they need to get there. And we see Frodo and Sam, like, it kind of cuts back to them, and we see them that literally all these armies are being called forth to the Black Gate. And I don't know if they actually did it in like the movie in the extended edition, but basically in the books, remind me if they did. In the books, they like accidentally get like ganged up with a bunch of orcs for a while.
That happens in the movie.
Yeah, so they're with a bunch of orcs for a little while, and they end up kind of like basically like cutting away from them and escaping and moving on. They get rid of their orc garb. At this point, I mean, it's described that they've been traveling through Mordor for like a couple days with like they've run out of water, like fresh water. They've run out of food, and they are just like on their last legs, like literally have to drink from some like black stream, like where it's like a like gross, like literally just to survive, like that they drink out of this like dank, shitty stream.
Yeah, because they had run out of water, and yeah, it's this is where I was talking about, like they go through stuff. Sam and Frodo, there's a point where Frodo can't walk, and Sam is literally having to carry him.
Yeah, and this is why, man, anybody that watches all these movies realizes like Sam is like the real hero. Like he saves the ring from being captured from the goblins right there. He saves Frodo from like Shelob. You know, he was always there supporting Sam, and he literally picks up. And in the end, like he could have just like left Frodo, taken the ring, and done it himself. Like he didn't even need to take Frodo, but he literally is like, I'm gonna carry you, Frodo, so that you can complete this mission.
In a way, this is Sam's movie.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Sam is the man. He's the one.
It's him. It's his movie and one other person's movie, and that other person has led his army to the Black Gate.
Yeah. And they're before the Black Gate. They call out Sauron. They say, "Come forth and face us. We're here to face you." And the Black Gates opened up, and forth comes this, you know, a great army, an army far greater than the men that they have brought with them.
And they surround them.
Yeah. And what comes forth also is the mouth of Sauron. This like basically this creature that speaks for Sauron, and it comes forward and says like, "Oh, you've come forth and." You've come forth and to face us. Like, did you think that your hobbits were going to sneak in here? And he throws the Mithril shirt down, and they're like, "Oh my god, they've captured Frodo!" Like, which means that they must have the ring. But in this moment, they realize, I'm like, but if they had the ring, then it would be all for naught, and it's not.
Even if it was all for naught, this is all this is all they can do. Their last stand, anyways.
Yeah, exactly. So he fucking cuts the mouth of Sauron's head off, and he says, "Let's fucking go," and like leads the charge, and is like, "Let's go." They engage in this battle.
This is also a scene where we get like, I feel like there's a couple like little one shots, but the thing that stands out is Gimli saying, "I never thought I'd die fighting with an elf."
And what about a friend?
And that's basically the wrap up of their. When I said like earlier that there are some smaller arcs that get smaller resolutions, that's sort of like the wrap up. Like they went from a dwarf and an elf, like they those things don't go together, to being friends.
Yep, yeah, and it is kind of like you know it's kind of cool. It's kind of nice. Merry and Pippin are back together, both in their Rohirrim and Gondor's guard guard outfits and stuff, which in the books. It's cool that they did it in that one, but in the books is not actually what happened. Éowyn, Merry, or actually no, they actually might have been present, but
in the movie, Éowyn and Faramir, I know, are back at Minas Tirith, because that's when they.
So a couple of things that are, these are actually points of the book that are easily left out, right? Because it's not like huge to the story. But one thing that actually fully solidifies that Aragorn is like the king, to prove to people is that like there's like a prophecy or like something said that the king has healing hands, like he has basically magical healing hands, and he goes and there's Éowyn, Merry, and Faramir are all like laying in like a wasting state, like they're wasting away and dying, and he literally calls for Kingsfoil, the same little herb. He calls for Kingsfoil, and using Kingsfoil and like he literally lays his hands on all three of them and like cures them of this wasting disease, which they were basically given. Like Faramir was just in a dire state, and Éowyn and Merry were literally like a curse was put on them for like striking the Witch King.
Yeah.
And he like basically cures them of this.
And that's just not in the.
Yeah. And it proves to people that see it basically like he is the king. Like he is literally the king because he has healing hands. Like not if there's any doubt about it before, like he has something that only he has. Like he has literal magic that only the king can do. Also in the books, another thing, not important necessarily to the plot, but just interesting point is that Aragorn uses the Palantir as well. Like he uses the Palantir that's there to like challenge Sauron and like draw his eye and like see, basically has like a mental struggle with Sauron and like beats him and says like, I'm coming for you, and calls him out. So that was like his first phase of like drawing Sauron's eye, is to like you call him out with the Palantir, have this mental battle with him that only people that are like of the strong, like literally the kingly bloodline, which even the stewards are of the kingly bloodline, can use it and like succeed basically. So they begin this battle.
Yeah, the Aragorn has successfully led the troops out of Mordor, and Sam and Frodo, on their last legs, are trying to make it up to Mount Doom. And at one point they see that there's basically like an entryway. Like they don't have to get to the top of the mountain. There's this doorway into the volcano. Yeah,
but before they can make it, they are assaulted by Gollum, who's not dead, motherfucker. Like,
But in a way, like this basically jump starts there, like they were barely holding on,
Mm-hmm.
but like I presumably like adrenaline at this point, they're able to like get back on their feet, like they get him off of them, they like cast him aside, and they run into Mount Doom, and they get there, and Frodo gets to the ledge within the volcano, and he's holding the ring, and he
Fails.
He puts it on.
He puts it on and says, "No,
it's mine."
In the very end, Frodo fails, and he is going to take the ring for himself, just like it sealed over for him when he had the chance. When his friend was begging him, cast it into the fire and needs to be destroyed, he did not.
He fails too.
And so,
this is where we got into the argument last time.
Yeah, he fails.
But Gollum appears and is able to see, even though Frodo's gone invisible with the ring on, he's able to like see the footprints, and he hops onto him.
High perception.
Yeah. And he's also just used to the powers of the ring.
Yeah, he knows what to look for. I mean, he's the one that snuck around like that for a long time.
And he bites his finger off.
He bites the ring finger off and has a hold of the ring. And they're basically, they continue to struggle a little bit, and Frodo pushes Gollum off and falls off with him.
Yeah, they both fall off, and Gollum falls right into the lava, and we get this scene of him holding the ring out of the lava with his last breath, like just trying to keep it and hold his precious, and it goes into the lava with him. And at first it doesn't start to burn.
It just sets right on top of that like burned crust of what used to be Gollum's
and we see Sam having the opportunity to pull Frodo out.
Yep.
And the ring's in, and then we start to see it burn up in the fires of Mount Doom.
And we see the reaction from the tower with Sauron's eye that's been looking across the battlefield and looking for Frodo and Sam. And we've seen it so many times. It begins to shudder and dissolve and break, and literally earthquake goes out, and all the people all the orcs begin to retreat. But as they retreat, literally, and like the earth falls in and swallows them whole and destroys literally all the armies of Sauron.
And Sam and Frodo, while still like barely getting out of Mount Doom, the volcano begins to erupt.
Yeah, and they are basically like fucked. And everybody looks with hope as they see the volcano, or as they see Sauron being destroyed, and then they see the volcano erupting,
knowing where their friends are.
Yeah, knowing that they're there, like believing, like, oh my god, like they're gonna die, like the volcano's erupting.
Like I knew what happened, but seeing like all of their faces, like the happiness, just like because we see Merry and Pippin just know, like in that moment they believe that their friends just died. Yeah, that their friends saved them, but that they're gone.
Yeah, and so we see this touching moment with Frodo and Sam laying there, like basically potentially dying, and they're like kind of saying their last goodbyes, but Gandalf rides in with the Eagles, and they find Frodo and Sam, and they save them. They bring them out
on the Eagles that were only able to do it, only able to take them out, but not able to take them there. I've heard that argument before I saw these movies, so I went in with that thought, and I'm like, no, like the Eagles wouldn't have worked. The ring wraiths would have come and killed them. Like the tower would have seen them coming. That's not a real solution. I get it. Yeah. Like I get the instinct, but
yeah, no, I understand some of it, because at one point I also thought the same thing. I was like, why didn't they take the Eagles? When I heard that original thing, I even heard like the theory that was like Gandalf saying "Fly, you fools" was him saying "Take the Eagles, you fools." But no, yeah, they would have just been, the Eagles would have been seeing the ring wraiths literally ride on drakes that are giant dragons, and they would have just gone after. They would have sensed the ring and gone after the one that had the ring and just killed it and taken the ring. Been done. Movie over.
Also, a quote that I had heard out of context before, but when I heard it within context, hits really hard, is I'm glad you're here with me here at the end of all things.
Yep. Man, yeah.
And it's just so beautiful. Like they're on this like little safe passage of the lava before they're picked up, and it just hits so hard. And you just like look at these two; they're like ravaged from the journey they've been on. They are not the same hobbits they started out as.
Yeah, and it's just such a it's just an epic moment, you know, like the success, but also like this down feeling of like, oh my God, they're going to die. And then like the coming in and getting saved at the last second, like roller coaster of emotions right there in the end.
But they are saved, and they're carried off, and the next thing we see is basically Frodo awaken in a bed.
In a bed again in Rivendell.
This says that he awakens in Minas Tirith, not in Rivendell.
Oh, okay. Just cut that part out.
No, we're leaving that.
He awakens in Minas Tirith.
And he is greeted slowly by all the surviving members of the Fellowship coming in, and I've seen this scene parodied before, like with like the audio like dubbed out, but the scene itself is very touching, seeing them all come in, and so joyous, happy to see Frodo awaken, having survived. It's just this touching reunion. They all come in to basically embrace their friend, and the last one to come in, we see Sam. So Sam also survived, and they just give this look to each other, and it's
it's touching.
It's touching. It's beautiful. It's meaningful. And forget whatever they have to say about it in Clerks 2.
Oh my God. With the gay hobbits thing. Like, why can't men display some you know, again, not men, hobbits, you know, male characters display some you know, like some humble, gentle masculinity. Okay. Like, why can't you be like, you just went on this crazy journey with your brother here, like someone so close to you, and you can't like fucking feel some affection for them and be like, wow, man, look at that stuff we did. Holy crap, dude. Like, we really went through some shit there. And like, I think to be gay, I guess.
It's worth noting. Well, we can get to it. We're about to go at this point.
Yeah.
They have so before the Shire, before they return to the Shire, we have the king's procession.
The coronation of Aragorn, like, as you know, to be fully recognized as king by Gandalf, the crown placed upon his head. Everybody's there. All the, you know, any surviving, to say, major figures that we've seen have basically come for this, you know, to see the king crowned, including
Arwen, who is immediately embraced by Aragorn and taken in as the queen.
Yeah. Yep. And we just have like everybody there to see the king's king's crown, and as he walks, you know, he's being like bowed to by all these people, but he comes forth to the hobbits. and they go to bow, and man, this is just, God, this moment, it's kind of like chokes you up.
It's such a good
it's so perfect.
I knew it was coming. I knew the line, but to see him say it, you bow to no one.
Yeah, and he bows
my
to them.
Friends.
Yeah, and
he bows and everyone else bows around them.
And these hobbits, which is like a thing because they're really small, so you have to like literally bow to get below them. But yeah, they just look around at all these people bowing, you know, to them, and it's like, you know, man, it's just a fucking.
It's so good.
It's just such a good moment, man. It's just like, damn, yeah, these boys did it. And again, Aragorn just displaying a noble king, right? Not being like, I'm the fucking king now. Yeah, everybody should bow to me. He's like, no, like, you saved the fucking world. Like, I wouldn't be a king of anything if it wasn't for, like, you know, what you all did here. And like, you know, just shows his humbleness. It's like, fuck, man, like, God damn it, like, who could be a better king?
True.
And I mean, at this point, we basically, I mean, have like the conclusion of the movie. I mean,
the hobbits are able to return to the Shire. We see them at that pub. I can't remember the name of it, but the one that we saw them at the beginning of the Fellowship, where they were all having fun. And this time, instead of just looking at the ladies dancing, we see Sam go up to the girl he always liked and
marry that bitch.
Yeah, just marriage
next day, like.
And the movie doesn't not articulate this, but a few years pass. We see, I mean, it articulates it in the fact that we see him get married and we see him have children, and Frodo has written into Bilbo's book, where Bilbo wrote an Unexpected Journey. Frodo wrote the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so he writes their story there, and I believe it's called the Red Book of Westmarch, is what it's like.
I think called. That's what I just
but yeah, and then they basically you know, at this point, after a couple of years, Bilbo is now like really, you know, the longevity that the ring bestowed upon him has now faded, and he is now wearing his many, his upper end of Hobbit years. Like it's very clearly displayed now, and he has been given a gift that he is going to be allowed to go to the Grey Havens with Galadriel, Elrond, and Gandalf,
yeah,
who are all, I think I mentioned in one of the other podcasts is that like the whole thing is that their rings only worked as long as Sauron's ring worked, and once his was destroyed, their power now has faded. They're built the ring's powers to protect their lands and keep them, keep them at the way that they were is gone. So now
the age of elves and is over. It's the age of man.
Yeah, and so they are all going to go back to the Grey Havens. They're going to go back to where
Undying Lands.
Yeah, and Gandalf is going to return there. He was sent. Gandalf was originally sent to guide men, against the evils, and Sauron is the last great evil that needed to be dealt with. And
Gandalf's work is done. The elves are leaving because they are no longer made for this world, and Bilbo leaves because he's had his adventures, and this seems like another fun one to go on.
Yep. And so as they, walk away, Frodo lets the other hobbits know that, the pain that he's felt for years that has not ever really healed. It leading him to say like he's going to go away too. Like he can't ever really be satisfied here in Middle Earth.
He could never return to the Shire.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, God, like in that moment, I'm like, you feel so bad for him because that he never wanted to leave the Shire.
Yeah. And now it's like this,
but now he can't go back.
Yeah. That journey really took from him. Like he had to make a sacrifice that nobody can really understand. Like it drew from his constitution, his willpower. And he always has the wound of the ring race, like that. He always has like a basically a small curse upon him, and he can never be satisfied or content anymore. And not in the Shire where he always just wanted to be. It's very sad. And it's sad that because of that, he has to go. Like basically he has to, that journey still killed him, as far as it is, like they're going to heaven, like the heaven that anybody could expect.
But Frodo does leave with his best friend, Sam, the Red Book of Westmarch.
Yeah.
And we see Sam with the other hobbits return to the Shire. And the film ends with him with his wife in the Shire.
Fuck yeah, this movie's amazing.
It's so good. It's such a... I went into this hearing that there were multiple endings to this movie and that the ending went on for so long. So maybe that helped, but I didn't think that the ending was too long. Everything that happened in the ending was important and needed to be shown.
Yeah, it concluded everybody's story.
If anything, I expected more stuff to be overly resolved, and like stuff that didn't need to be resolved didn't. Like we didn't get like a clear cut like what's Gimli up to now, what's Legolas's life. No, like they weren't integral to the plot, and so we didn't need to see what happened to them. All we needed to see is what happened to the hobbits.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're the
heart of the story.
They're heart of the story. Yeah, and we know what happened to Aragorn. Like that again. He returned the king returned.
So let's go through. I want to start off by talking about in the last two movies. I made a point to say who my favorite character was, and this movie really tipped over the top who my favorite character was. And God, Aragorn is so fucking great.
He's the fucking best.
And Viggo Mortensen, it's just this arc of a lowly ranger, like basically when he's thrust into a position where he needs to do what's right, he constantly does the right thing.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about someone being like such a overly good person, like just like, oh, we get it, you're great, you're awesome. And that's kind of the idea I've had of Aragorn going into this, that he would just be like too perfect, but everything, all of the actions he does, like they're the right things, they're the good things to do, but it feels like they come from this character. It doesn't feel like it's, oh, he does this because it's we need this character to be good and do this right things. It feels like this is this man. This man is meant to do these honorable things, and when he becomes the king, he is the king. He deserves to be the king. And when you see him crowned, again, the you bow to no one and he bows to the hobbits. Just even when he, like, what we've seen kings in these movies like succumb to power and like be tempted by it, and when he has, basically he's the most powerful man in Middle Earth, he takes the time to bow to his friends, the people who in a way helped him to achieve his throne. He never forgot.
Yeah, no, it's just something else. And speaking about what you're kind of saying is that, so we see him do many good things in this, but the feeling is, I think it's like, the feeling is not that like he just does good things and stuff. Like he isn't just a perfect man, but he is a man who chooses to make right decisions when he's facing them.
Is.
Yeah,
he's constantly faced with other choices, and he always makes the correct one.
Yeah,
well, maybe not always, but what he always thinks is the correct choice.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he like it doesn't put it out like he's just like, oh, we have to do this good thing and stuff. Like it seems like he has to make it like take their army to the Black Gates where they don't know what's going on with Frodo and Sam. They just have to hope. They're like, this is the best thing we can do. He could be like, no, let's all hole up here. Hopefully Frodo and Sam get through.
His choices always appear to weigh on him. Like if if a sacrifice is necessary, he always seems willing to make it. Like when he had to leave Arwen in Rivendell, like he didn't want to do that. Like he truly loves Arwen, and he had to just give that up because something more important had to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he knew, like. And I don't know how much he knew, but he basically was under the assumption that Arwen wouldn't be there when he returned.
Yeah, exactly. And he knew he was giving that up, and he was like, I accept that, right? Like when he sees her at his coronation, it's like a big deal. He's like, oh my God, you're still here. You waited for me, and we succeeded. And it was like, oh my God, it's a big deal. Like he never expected her to stay and knew that he was giving that up to.
And even though he didn't expect her to stay, there's a scene in the movie where like basically Aragorn, we talked about Éowyn like clearly being smitten with Aragorn, and Aragorn was aware of this, and we see in Return to the King he gets a chance to say, I'm sorry, I understand, but I can't be what you want. And even when he had no certainty that he would see Arwen again, he still stayed true to her. And I think that's another one of those moments where I was just like, God, what a good person. Because he could have just like played it both ways. Like, oh, I'm never going to see Arwen again, so Éowyn's cool. But no, he does the right thing.
Yeah. And also, what a good example of how like a, strong, secure man like lets down a woman. You just be like, hey, like it's not going to work out, blah, blah, like, like that. What a fucking guy. Like he just says it how it is. He's like, sorry, can't do it. Like my heart belongs somewhere else. Like fucking Jesus Christ. How much better could you be? Well, but again, it's really the thing is like great, really good guy, excellent, like person and everything, but it never seems just like fake. It doesn't seem like it's just like, oh, he's just some perfect whatever guy. It always seems like organic, like it's a man just making these better decisions, trying to do the best thing and making these difficult decisions and just trying.
It's a role just not anybody could play. And so the fact that Viggo Mortensen is able to give this character life, and like you can't imagine him being played by anybody else.
Yep, I can't imagine any of these characters being played by anyone else. Like it better be like 100 years before they try and remake Lord of the Rings again. Like
they better not try to.
Yeah, don't do it, dude. Don't you fucking do it.
I mean, Amazon's doing a show, but like it's within the world, it's not the straight remake.
Yeah. So, so are there any other like?
I mean, we can just go through some characters. I mentioned Éowyn again, like her. I didn't like her in the second movie. I like her more in this movie. Merry and Pippin are basically thrust into the midst of war and battle, and are especially Merry is actually like in the middle of the Battle of Minas Tirith, and like he doesn't cower away from it. He goes in. He's ready to fight because he knows that his friends are doing something way more scary.
Yeah, we see here something that like in the Hobbit, actually the Hobbit movies, Gandalf mentions that that hobbits have courage, right? And difference between courage and bravery being like bravery is doing doing things that are like heroic and stuff with like without being afraid, right? Courage is doing things that you are afraid of anyways, right?
Yeah.
And we see Pippin literally trying to stand against Denethor, the steward of Gondor, like a person that he's supposed to be serving, trying to save Faramir. We see Merry literally striking out at the Witch King, like at like this crazy, like deadly wraith that he's faced before and been cast aside from, like that could just like totally kill him, and he still summons up the courage to strike at him and give both him and Eowyn the chance to succeed in the day.
Yeah. And I just noticed this: Merry and Pippin each individually save Eowyn and Faramir.
Yes, who end up it's sort of indicated, but they end up together. So
which hey, that's sort of like it's like so artfully like intertwined that way, because I didn't even realize that the two hobbits saved those two people until this moment, and it just sort of adds to the
Yep.
Oh God.
Yeah, they essentially save the like the leaders of both of those states. Like again, if it weren't for Aragorn becoming king, like Faramir would be the new steward of Gondor.
But Faramir is probably going to take over the guard.
Yeah,
and I mean technically Eowyn's not going to rule over Rohan because that goes to Eomer, but like she'll serve it. What?
Eomer,
yeah.
But yeah, still, like, again, these like leader figures of this, like, again, this is why they not only they take over Isengard and like help with the Battle of Helm's Deep, but they also saved these two important figures, and without them, like, I mean, like, they would be leaders, but I mean those would be major losses. They would not have killed the Witch King without
they wouldn't have gone to Minas Tirith without Pip looking at the Palantir.
Yeah, and this is why sometimes you're like, oh well, Frodo and Sam are the ones that actually destroy the ring, but like Merry and Pippin do some majorly influential and important things.
Saruman would not have been felled without Merry and Pippin.
Yeah, they again, if without Merry and Pippin, Saruman would have just mustered more of his forces, put on a defense, and like the Rohirrim would have to travel through Fangorn Forest to get to the borders of Isengard, and then have to fight all the remaining orcs and Saruman with his power. In
Fellowship of the Ring, Saruman and Sauron are two separate. Like, Sauron is this sort of bigger bad because of the ring, but Saruman is almost like an equal evil threat, because we know that he is, in the first movie, more powerful than Gandalf, and that makes him a serious threat. So to think that those two bad guys were individually essentially taken down by the actions of the four hobbits, that's sort of just like such a satisfying thing to think of.
Yeah, and it's again, it just always adds to why they deserve so much praise.
And Gandalf, like, I understand him being a favorite character from the first and the second movie, and in this movie he just basically takes charge. Like, for a lot of, like, the Battle of Minas Tirith is basically being led by Gandalf, who then in the middle of the battle like goes off to basically help also save Faramir.
Yeah,
and also at one point, I don't know if this is extended edition, faces the Witch King himself.
Yeah, faces the Witch King, leads the charge, literally saves the retreating men as they're coming. Like, it's, I mean, saves
Faramir's men when they're being attacked by the ring wraiths earlier in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I mean, yeah, Gandalf actually does a fair amount, like, to contribute to the success of the story. And we see this thing here, right, where Gandalf the Grey, he gets into some battles and stuff, like, we see this transition where he turns into Gandalf the White, and in the Two Towers he like leads them somewhere and talks a little bit and like casts out Theoden, but then like he's not there for the rest of the movie.
Yeah, he comes in with the Rohirrim army, and so we sort of see him there. In this movie, he's playing an active role.
Yeah, he's doing, and that's the thing, is like Gandalf was not ever supposed to be an active, like, doing things until he realized that, like, all right, Saruman is actively working against us, and that's not what we were supposed to do, so I need to change my role. And him becoming, Gandalf the White is him taking on the power he needs to actually take that active role.
Yeah,
he was Gandalf the Grey to be like a lesser, not very powerful, form, so that he could just be an advisor to people and kings, and help guide them, not actually influence events. And so we really see that in this movie. How he's like doing whatever he can to defeat the evil. And Legolas and Gimli, and they're just, you know, they're cool. They're cool and they're fun. Like they're there.
Yeah, that's why I brought them up. Basically, the end of their arc is the moment where they become friends, where they're able to get past their prides and just accept, like, hey, we're friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me ask. I mean, I don't know if there's any other characters we can comment on too much more, but
Gollum dies. I feel, as much as I praised Gollum as a character in The Two Towers, in Return of the King, he's just playing the role of a corrupting figure.
Yeah.
I do think I've always thought it was such a good choice to have Gollum be, basically, if Gollum had not appeared, the ring would not have fallen into Mount Doom. So the idea that Gollum is the reason that the ring fell in, like, I know it's not entirely on him, but I do think that that is a sort of poetry, and it's a symmetry to this movie that at the beginning of the movie we see technically Deagle pull up the ring, like basically unearth the ring from its, like, who knows how long it was just sitting there, and it maybe could have sat there forever.
Mm-hmm.
But Smeagol was involved with it being brought back to life, and Smeagol was there when it was cast out of this world.
That's really well said. And it echoes back to Gandalf having this foresight and not having, like, you know, because it was like why didn't you slay Gollum? And, you know, Bilbo didn't kill Gollum because of pity, but Gandalf hasn't stopped or tried to prevent Gollum from following them when he knows them in the Mines of Moria, because he says Gollum still has a part to play. And, you know, he didn't know what or why, but Gollum still had something to, and Gollum,
and for a while you think that it's just him leading them into Mordor.
Yeah.
Which then alone, he plays an important part. They couldn't have gotten there without him.
Yeah. Would they have gotten, they would have maybe made it to Black Gates, and they would have probably just gotten captured and boom, all over right there. Like without Gollum, just as well. And, you know, it's something to say about, like, again another Hobbit. Another Hobbit. Yeah. Without Gollum, the ring would not have made it into Mount Doom, and they would not have succeeded.
So this is the movie where it's basically shown that he was at one point a Hobbit that got corrupted, and it was like an immediate corruption. Like he didn't even touch the ring, and he was willing to kill his cousin over it.
Yeah, which that's and in the books, I think it does talk a little bit more about, like, who Smeagol was as a person. And he was like a craven sort of, like, and I don't think Smeagol was a actual, like, a full Hobbit. He was like a Hobbit-like person. He was, you know, they were like river folk, which are like, you know, a kind of Hobbit that just lives near there, and they're a little different, little, like, more whatever. But it did say that Smeagol was a craven person that did crave, like, attention and power.
Okay. And
that's why he was corrupted, because any person that craves those things can be corrupted, because the ring will promise it'll use that in you to like take hold and, like, to corrupt your mind. That's why Hobbits are normally so resistant, because they don't crave anything but just, you know, like, I think Bilbo says it in thing. He's like, you know, Hobbits want nothing more than, like, good food, like, you know, like tilled earth, and, like, you know, like, you know, a warm place to, like, sleep or some shit. Like they want, like, simple things. They don't really want anything bigger than that. That's why it took so long for it to even get to Frodo, where he's like, no, I do want this power. Like, it took literally all the time he was traveling for it to slowly, you know, get its, you know, corrupt him.
But yeah, so Smeagol, he doesn't play as much of, like, you don't get as much character from him, but I think his character was well enough established in The Two Towers that the arc of his birth as Gollum at the beginning of the movie and his death as Gollum at the end of the movie, I think, is its own sort of, like, his character is not as fulfilling as he was in The Two Towers, but the arc of his story is fulfilled within the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if there are any other major characters that we've missed.
Yeah. So what are your maybe, like, final impressions? You know, a guy that resisted watching this movie for so many years, and now you finally watched them all. We're at the end of it all. We're at the end of all things. Here we are.
I'm happy to have seen them, and honestly, like, I made this point before, but I kind of don't regret not seeing them sooner, because I don't know if I would have appreciated them then as much as I did watching it now. like maybe like a couple years ago, I could have had the same level of appreciation for it, but these are truly like remarkable movies. I kind of wish I could see them in theaters. That may be able to elevate them to another level. I'll be honest, they they wouldn't be my all-time favorite movies as they are yours, which is no comment on them. It's just like my all-time favorite movies either hit me in some nostalgic place or like they just gave me something truly unexpected. And in a way, these movies were expected going into me, but the richness of these films is not, you don't go into the Lord of the Rings, you don't watch those movies to see something you've never seen before. You go in because it's a familiar story with such rich detail and so masterfully crafted that that's what you're getting from it. And that's really what it is. It's as a film trilogy, you can't argue anything other than it's their masterpieces.
And it's really powerful to be able to say that when these movies are preparing to be 20 years old.
Yeah. I mean, the first one is
like
the first one I think is this year.
I looked it up just to make sure. Is in fact December 19th of 2001. This year,
December.
Fellowship of the Ring will be 20 years old in December of this year.
I hope they bring it back to theaters.
God, that would be so amazing if they bring it back to theaters. I will definitely be watching it in theaters.
And I'll go with you.
What an insane thing to think is that these movies are still this powerful 20 years later.
Honestly, like this movie definitely uses, I think it uses a lot of practical, but it does use some CG, and I think all of it holds up.
Yeah.
The freaking ghost, if there's any part of the movie that the three movies where the CG gets a bit wonky, it may be in the Fellowship, like the ring vision that Frodo sees when he has the ring on, and the ghost, but even then it works. Like, I don't think of it as, early 2000s CGI when like the Scooby-Doo movie was coming out. I'm like, I don't leave the movie. I'm not taken out of the movie at any point with any of the production design, any of the effects. It all holds up so well.
And that's almost something to be said because I think because we've gotten into a time where CG is so like norm, it's just the norm. Like anything you're gonna do, like it's gonna be big and crazy. You're just CGing everything.
You're just shooting actors in front of green screens the whole time, pretty much.
Yeah, and there's a lot lost when you're not using more practical effects. I think the Star Wars was like a big pioneer. They were like the newer, not newer movies. I have to say the prequel films, episodes, 1, 2, and 3.
They were coming out around the same time. And some of those effects don't hold up as well.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like a big thing. Like they were pioneering CG at that time. They were like, boom, we couldn't make these movies before because CG didn't exist, and now we can make these movies. Bam.
But if you take a look at Yoda versus Smeagol, one of these is just like, oh look, they made the puppet a digital figure. He looks cool. It's whatever. I almost missed the puppet. Versus Smeagol, who you don't even really consider the fact that he's a CG character when you're looking at him.
Yeah. Original CG mocap too. Like that was like the first days of motion capture.
Again, Andy Serkis, like he built his career off of it, but it starts with this.
Yeah, it's and it's just crazy that this film is this old and it's still the actual like making of this movie is like it's I don't know what was it, monumentous. It's
momentous.
Momentous. Yeah, it is really just insane that how good these movies are so many years
and
later.
How beautiful New Zealand is.
Yeah. It's of course, like New Zealand is apparently like an amazing, beautiful countryside. Wouldn't even have expected it. Like I thought it was like some kind of jungle or something, which is silly to me. But I'm like, it's right next to Africa. It's like an island next to Africa. Like
no, you're thinking of Madagascar,
Australia. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, what an idiot.
So, but
we'll cut that out.
I won't. But no, like it's easy to get, like, if you've never been to a country, you're not thinking about where the places are. Oh, sorry. But yeah, it's they're really, 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 really good movies, and I'm happy to have watched them.
I'm very glad that you made it around to watching them.
Yeah.
So now that you watched my favorite movie, I think I have to get around to watching your favorite TV show. So
Yeah, but we'll see. We can save that for my birthday. In the meantime, we can do some other stuff too. I actually had an idea of a movie that I'd like to get you to watch and talk about, but we'll save that for when it comes.
excellent. Was there anything else we can say about this film and all these films?
I mean, if you got to the end of these and you haven't watched them, what's wrong?
Why the fuck are you listening to this podcast? We literally just give you every fucking part of the movie and spoil it.
Yeah, like, and if you haven't, I mean, so I can't tell you to go watch the movies if you haven't already. Like, if you got into this point and you haven't seen the movies, I'm sorry. Like, but hey, maybe what we have to say will help you to take a look at the movies in a different light. Because I feel like there were a few points in this where either you made me see something differently because of the added context and knowledge, or I allowed you to see something differently because of my fresh take on it, that you can't look at this movie with fresh eyes.
I can't. Right. It has been a really interesting, it's been cool and interesting having this experience because there have been many moments where you made me feel that way.
Yeah.
So,
and to be able to find new things in your favorite thing is such a wonderful thing. And like, that's why, like, when I have things that are my favorite, I'll respect them and I'll regard them, but I try not to overdo them. And because when something's your favorite and it could still surprise you, it's such a good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. It just means that there's so much more to those things.
And if I was able to help you get that experience, that makes me happy.
Man, it makes me happy that you finally watched the movies and that you can experience what I've always experienced.
I love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
All right. I think we can wrap it up.
All right. Well, until next time, folks, this has been Robert
and Ryan.
Have a good one.